Well, the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has warned Hamas that suffering will continue because they chose not to accept the latest ceasefire peace deal.
Hamas could have answered with a single word: yes. Instead, Hamas waited nearly 2 weeks and then proposed more changes. The war that Hamas started on October 7th with its barbaric attack on Israel and on Israeli civilians will go on.
Joining me now, the Australia, Israel and Jewish Affairs Council Executive Director, Colin Rubenstein. Colin, what in particular did Hamas reject about this latest ceasefire proposal? Because they've rejected every single one now for months.
Well, good to see you, Sherry. They've made it clear that they've imposed conditions that tantamount to a rejection of the deal. The Secretary of State, Blinken, has pointed out unequivocally. And Israel, on the other hand, has accepted this three-phase deal that the Americans crafted. They clearly want Israel to pull out of Gaza completely and to stop now the war. And it's clear that Sinwar, the Hamas leader, thinks he's on a winner in terms of the more bloodshed that's inflicted on his fellow Gazans, the better it is for his strategy in wearing Israel down. So
he even admitted that.
Should understand by now.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt, Colin, but he even admitted that this week. We saw reporting in the Wall Street Journal that, as you just said, Sinwar described Palestinian civilian deaths as necessary sacrifices. I mean, do you think this is something that the international bodies, like the UN, just don't understand, that this is Hamas's strategy for their own people to suffer?
They either don't understand or they're so blinded by their hostility to Israel that they, just look the other way, because Hamas is clearly, a genocidal death cult. It's a terrorist organisation, it's dictatorship, and frankly, the Gazans need to be liberated. They need to be liberated from Hamas, as I'm sure many Gazans feel this very day, and many people in the Arab world, many of the interlocutors in Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan and beyond understand. And the Abraham Accords are holding firm because the Arab world and much of the Muslim world understands that Hamas is the problem. It's a genocidal entity. It's backed by Iran. It's a threat to all of them. And they do understand that Israel has an absolute right to self-defense and that Hamas has to be dismantled in the same way that the Nazis had to be dismantled at the end of World War II, and that the Germans had to be denazified. In a similar fashion, the Palestinians in Gaza, they need to be de-Hamasified, and an opportunity created for Palestinians who might be prepared to live alongside Israel in peace to pursue that option to the benefit of both the Palestinians and obviously to Israel, which is tied up with fights against its very existence, not only, of course, from Hamas, but from its backer, Iran, and obviously from Hezbollah in the north as well.
Yeah. Colin, I want to get to this independent report to the United Nations Human Rights Council. It has accused Israel, alongside Hamas, of a string of war crimes and human rights abuses, including torture, extermination, starvation, and even gender persecution. What's your response to this UN report?
Well, it's predictable. This UN body, like so many other UN bodies, have a track record of anti-Israel hostility that's very extreme. So their position is completely divorced from reality. They don't understand the difference between a democratic country pursuing its self-defense in the most humane way. Experts like John Spencer point out that Israel's done more to prevent civilian casualties than any other other military in history in situations of urban warfare like this. On the other hand, Hamas is guilty of double war crimes. It's deliberately trying to kill as many Israelis as possible. It has through the years. It clearly has on October 7. That was a genocidal act. It's continuing to fire rockets. And at the same time, it's deliberately putting its own people at risk. It's a war crime on its own Gazans and its use of human shields. We all know that. And that's what we're seeing happening now. It's time for the international community and the UN bodies to wake up to reality and put pressure on Hamas.
Indeed it is. Colin, we are out of time.
And
Thank
to
you
release the hostages.
very much for joining me.